Okay, right. Well, I've always been interested in writing. I mean, even from a very little boy, actually, I was always keeping diaries and sort of recording and chronicling things and writing things down. And my favourite thing at school was kind of those news books you used to keep as 7 or 8 year olds, you know, filling the news. And then at school, I was really, it was English was the subject that really appealed to me. But I also loved, I was always a bit quite nosy, so I loved hearing about people's stories and about what they did, what made them tick. So I was always asking a lot of questions. People used to say, "Oh, you ask too many questions," but it's just the kind. I wasn't being rude. I was just genuinely interested in people and their stories. So I had a love of kind of football and pop music from a very early age, and films and TV. And it was just a natural extension, really, of talking to people and hearing stories. And the more I heard, the more I was amassing in my head. And I thought, I've got to get this down. I've got to write this down. And that's really where the idea of writing a book came. And it was funny enough, it was a postman at Royal Mail called Malcolm. I don't even know if Malcolm's still there. And he was a Millwall fan, Malcolm, and he told me, funny enough, he went to the 1970 FA Cup final, the famous one between Chelsea and Leeds, and he was telling me a story about it, and I thought, it was 50 years ago, and he remembered every single detail about it. 40 years ago, sorry, in about 2010, and he was told it's such rich memories and powers of description that I thought, well, if Malcolm's got these memories, other people will have. So I thought about writing a book about the kind of the FA Cup final and about people's memories of them. It went hand in hand with a kind of what I saw as a loss of status of the FA Cup final. I won't go into the reasons that, because it's probably not the time and the place, but the FA Cup had become a shadow of what it was, but people's memories still remained very, very rich. So I wrote this book, which is called From Bovril to Champagne, which is basically fans' memories of their experience of going to the FA Cup final. And it was just about talking to people, saying and hearing about how they, you know, what they did, what they remember, what they were doing at the time of their lives, and what they were doing now. Also, their recollections of the game, and it made a book. And that was my first book that I wrote 10 years ago. It seems a long time ago now, but I followed it up with a series of books about the FA Cup. Which, you know, I'm pleased I did. And it's the 150th anniversary of the FA Cup this year, actually next year. So I hope this provides quite a good sort of social history of the tournament for people.
And would you say, you've mentioned you've obviously then written quite a few other books. Would you say your first book was the hardest to write, or?
Yes, it probably was. And in some ways, without sounding arrogant, I wanted to test myself to understand the process of writing a book. I thought I could, but there are books around saying how to write a book, but I thought actually there's no substitute for doing it. So I wanted to understand the mechanics of writing a book, about what it took, how much time it took. I am an obsessive researcher, so I want to know every tiny little detail of everything, which is good in one way, but also problematic in another, because you end up with a mountain of stuff. It was the most difficult because you have no sort of template within your mind about what you're going to do. So it was kind of self-testing, if you like. And since then, it's become much easier. But I would say to people, just do it. I know that's easy to say, but people say to me, I want to write a book. And while I am sympathetic to them, I say, well, just do it. Because everybody, there's thousands, millions of people says, I want to write a book. I've got a book in me. You've just got to do it. You've got to get down to it. That's the hardest thing about writing a book, is sitting down to do it, and then completing it is very hard as well. But you've got to start. You can't write a book without starting one, and that might seem obvious. But now the people that go, and I did the same, Grace. I was for years saying, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book, and I never did. But then I just did. I just did it, and now I've written, I don't know, 8 or 9, something like that.
And could you share your process a little bit more with us? So, you know, especially your first one, did you have friends or family who were authors as well, or was it a case of just sitting down, having an idea, and thinking, I'm just going to start sharing these words and seeing where it goes, or did you plot?
Yeah, I mean the latter really. I mean, I spent obviously my life in words as a journalist, so I'm used to kind of interviewing people and kind of collating my thoughts in my head and then committing to paper. But writing a book is a very different kind of discipline. So there's a couple of things actually. One of the things you've got to do in terms of technically, write at pace. You should write at pace. And I always say to people, it's like a taxi meter. Now, I'm quite unforgiving when it comes to books, songs, films, anything like that. Your first page, your first chapter is all important. I say it's the taxi. When you get in a taxi, the meter's running, right? Straight away. If you see that taxi as the audience's or the reader's attention, if you don't get them, him or her, straight away, you'll lose them. And this is the same if I listen to a song or watch a film or read a book or whatever. If I'm not hooked, the craft is in that initial introductory piece, that almost the first minute of a reader or viewer's life. You've got to grab them, and I was very aware of that. So the book I wrote was in chapters, so I made sure that every chapter had a really good, strong opening. Because if you start, I said you need to start writing, but you need to start writing at pace quickly. That's why I will spend, and it's the same if I even write a news article, I'll spend like 90% of the time fretting over the first paragraph, getting that right, and then the rest of it flows. It's the same with a book. You get that opening piece right, you introduce a character. I mean, my books are I like good, strong characters. They're all real characters, by the way, but establish them as a character that people like, can empathise with, recognise, and want to get to know better is what you have to do in the kind of the initial phases of writing a book. So establish your character and your place really, really quickly. Make it attractive, lure people in. People want to know more. It's the classic page turner, isn't it? My books predominantly all have been about football. I'm not a one-trick pony. I have lots of other interests as well, but I just happen to have written about football. And my book about the 1966 World Cup final, which I wrote on to coincide with the 50th anniversary, was basically 66 on 66. So it was basically, I traced all the people around the world, got their stories, and wrote a book about them. And again, it's establishing a character, establishing an angle. And everybody has got a story, but everybody's got a different story, and you've got to find that angle and plough that particular furrow to make it distinctive and interesting.
Thanks, Matt. And in terms of it's clear that you're very passionate about the words and the craft, but in terms of success, what did you have in mind when you started writing, and was the end goal to get published? Was it just to prove a point to yourself? Was it a mixture of both?
Yeah, I think a mixture of both. It certainly it wasn't financially motivated. It was something that I knew I had to do, otherwise I'd regret it, because there is a sense of pride in producing a book. It's something you're producing something, you're leaving something behind, and you can say, yeah, I made that. It's kind of quite nice. But my brain was sort of just full of stuff that needed an outlet. It kind of kept nagging at me that I've got to write this down. I keep getting them now. I keep getting these ideas about, I must write this down. Or if I think you've got to have that kind of brain if you're going to be a writer. You've got to have a brain that's kind of receptive to things, ideas, and process, and you want to get it out. If you're not, then you probably shouldn't be a writer. But having said that, everybody can write a book. But the other thing is, and you might have heard this a lot, write about what you know. It's a cliche, but it's so true. Now, everybody has something that they know about, whether it's kind of cooking, whether it's about films, it's about fashion, about clothes, it's about the history of Royal Mail. Some people. So if you want to write, explore the things you know and you're passionate about, and then think about your own perspective, your unique perspective on that subject, or what you can bring to that subject, because everybody will have a unique subject on any subject in the world. Whether people choose to buy the book is another matter, but if your aim is just to write a book, then establish a subject that's close to your heart, that you're knowledgeable about, and then start committing it to paper. But as I say, the hardest part is starting. The hardest part is starting and finishing, actually, because the middle bit, right, that's where the hard work comes in. But it's almost like sitting down is the motivational bit, but the really hard graft comes at the end of the process when you're pulling all the different strands together. You're ensuring that it's 100% accurate. There's no grammatical errors. It's absolutely right. And the temptation is to go back and back and back and keep going for perfection. You will never get perfection. You can try, but you will always go back. So you've got to, at some point, you've got to be tough on yourself. No, that is good enough. I'd love to get perfection, but deadlines don't allow that. So get to as best you can in the time available.
And could you share a bit about the editing and the publishing process with us? How did you go about securing an agent and publishing?
Yeah, a good question. Again, when my first book, I self-published because I just wanted to learn the discipline. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to go down that, because if I waste time, not waste time, but if I make that an obstacle, if I don't write anything until I've got a publisher or stroke agent, I'm not going to do it. So I just wrote it, I self-published it, and then on the back of it, people got to know me and came to me, and I then got a publisher. So then my second book was just this tiny little book about Charlton Athletic. I don't know if there's any Charlton Athletic supporters watching out there, but the publisher came to me to say, we need someone to write a book about this. So I did. And on the back of that, all the other books followed. So the publisher will give you a structure, give you a framework, give you a guide, and then some of that heavy lifting around kind of proofing, distribution, cover design, typography is taken away from you. So you're writing it. So I was quite kind of fortunate with the publishers that sort of came to me, and I'd say that's not particularly typical, but a lot of people, I would recommend, if you really want to write a book, write it. And if you want to self-publish. It'll cost you a few quid. But if you want to master the art of writing a book and publishing a book, it's money well spent, because I think, what value can you put on something that you've crafted yourself, your family are proud of? You can pass it down to generations. I'd like to think my daughter might say to me, oh, like my dad, when I'm long gone, and her children and their children can say, oh, my granddad or my great granddad wrote that. And that's quite a nice thing, I think, So I'm quite proud of that. But just do it, because all the time I hear people saying, oh, I want to write a book. And I hear it all the time, and I hear it from the same people. I say, have you written that book yet? I said, no, I'm still thinking about it. I said, well, just do it. But you've got to be committed, because it's not easy. Writing a book is not an easy task. It requires dedication, commitment, time, application, which of course are the very reasons that people don't start doing it, because it is hard. It is hard to do, and it does take a lot of effort. And but I think the rewards, the creative rewards, certainly are definitely there. And if you make a few quid on the back of it, great.
And have you ever experienced the dreaded writer's block? And if so, what sort of tips and techniques could you share with our writers to get past that?
Yeah, I mean, I have and do frequently, but I used to discipline myself to try and write 1,000 words a day, which is some days, but it is weird. Some days, I think we all know it, don't we? Some days it just flows. It's just brilliant. You think, oh, this is great. It's all coming out. I'm finding the right words. I don't know whether it sounds a bit cliched, but sometimes I just go and have a walk and it just clears my head. I'll go and have a walk around around where I live, and I'll come back and I find I can write. So whatever's happened, the writer's block has been cleared, and I've got a clearer perspective. So if you do get writer's block, just walk away, have a cup of tea, maybe walk around the block, do whatever, and you come back, and invariably I find it does work, and the creative juices start flowing. Now, when the creative juices start flowing, don't stop, go with it, because that's the secret. If you find yourself on a run of form, you've got to go for it. You've got to take it. You've got to exploit it. And sometimes, I think the most I've written in a day is about 10,000 words. Because I just was in the zone. I just kind of went for it. You might have to go back and have a look at it, but you get it all down there, and that's the main thing, is getting it down. But I would say that anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. You just do need that bit of application. You need that momentum. You need a kickstart. and the more you write, the better you become at it. It becomes almost second nature. There will be days when it does come a bit harder than other days, but it does get easier.
And finally, if I could ask you, so obviously our Life at Royal Mail competition is open at the moment, and we've got until the 22nd of October that people can enter. And what would you say to anyone that's thinking about entering, or is I guess a little bit nervous or shy to start putting their words down?
Just don't be. I mean, I admire anyone that puts any words to paper. I admire anyone that has a go. I don't judge too harshly. I think people, everybody has got a unique perspective on something. So whatever you put down, that is uniquely yours. And when you feel that it's uniquely yours, and nobody can dispute that, that is uniquely yours. To me, that makes it very important. That makes the craft very important. I would say seize the moment. See this as the opportunity you've been waiting for. That book or that piece of writing you've been talking about, well, now you've got a chance to do it with this particular competition. So open up your laptop or whatever, turn it on, fire it up, start writing, get on with it. No more excuses, because we can all make excuses about everything, about whether it's going to the gym or whatever, or going on that diet. Whether it's starting to write. Writing should be a pleasurable, nice, creative thing. It's fun. It's glorious. The English language is a beautiful thing. Words and sentences are fantastic. Start using them. Start using it. He says, making a mistake with the language.
Brilliant. We'll end on that note, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure. No problem at all.